Welcome to AM 605, real talk about how to prosper in challenging times. Featuring Vancouver's top realty, mortgage, and wealth advisors. Now, here are your hosts, Melissa Wu, Gary Chan, and Joe Tang.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to AM 605. Today is March the 14th. I'm Joe Tang.
I'm Melissa Wu.
I'm Gary Chan.
And today we are very fortunate to have another guest speaker today who specializes in, land assembly, commercial. So we've got Chai here. Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience, your background?
Yes, I'm Chung. I've been in real estate for over 8 years now. I actually started off right off the bat with my commercial, residential, and agricultural licenses. So fully licensed and ready to go. I did a few commercial deals very first year with grocery stores and restaurants and whatnot. And then I've eventually evolved into land assembly, and I found that is probably my niche and most interesting part. Yeah, it's very time consuming, and you need a lot of energy and persistence and patience with everything.
So what captured you to doing that? Because you said you found out that's your thing. So what was the thing that attracted you doing that the most?
Probably because I have a lot of patience. So
it's important to have.
Yes, it's important to have, and I found that with I think a lot of times real estate, like we're really like touch and go, right? We're like go on everything. But with some people, it actually takes time. You know, you got to remember it's their home, it's the house that has a lot of memories, all of that, and so it'll take a lot of time for them. Even though it's good for them to sell it as a land assembly because they can maximize their value, but the emotional part, sometimes like we can't just disengage them from their emotions and say, hey, please sell, even though it's great for your potential in your pocket, right? That's not how it works.
So for those that aren't really familiar with like land assembly, that term, like, can you kind of briefly tell us what that means and then kind of like walk through what that process looks like?
So land assembly is typically, depending on where it's situated and whatnot, it's usually under an OCP, which is an official community plan by the city. And when they fall under that category, then it's much easier to assemble as a land assembly to basically maximize on an FAR, or like your ratio for what you can build. So maybe from a single family home to a townhouse site or a condo, mixed family use, etc.
And then once you have that, then what's the next step from there?
Next step, well, I guess there's a lot of intricate parts to it. And I'm not an expert in terms of rezoning and doing all of that. That is the developer's part, right? However, we facilitate in just trying to make sure that the seller and the purchaser, right, they are both on the same page and everyone's happy with all the terms and conditions moving forward. And yeah, you go from there.
Once they've found a piece of land that they want to sell or they want to acquire, then your job is to essentially go to talk to these people.
Yes. I am the mediator, the negotiator, the person, that's right, the go-to person to try and
convince them.
Well, I wouldn't say convince, I would say more approaching them with the possibilities, right? And sometimes a lot of the sellers, they might not necessarily understand that, hey, I actually have something that I can, not only have a good retirement savings plan after I sell it, and also have a mortgage-free house at the end, right? So you're basically, I guess your mindset should be like, I'm there to help them and also help the developer. So, that should be the mindset you're going into, I think, every deal.
Well, I guess it's hard because they see things their way. Like you said, their emotions, their memories, and everything. So it's hard to change that mindset or shift that.
I think with everyone, there's value, right? What do they value? What is it that they are wanting in life, and what is their next step? I think it's taking the time to understand who that person is, but also at the same time, now, disclaimer is you got to remember that you only represent one side.
Yes.
So even if you get to know like whomever, whatever, everything has to be you don't advise them on anything. You kind of listen, you understand it, and then you send them an offer or whatnot, and you have them, seek their legal advice and their own realtors, etc. So those all have to be done properly. So it's like you can listen, but you can't really, you can only listen. You can't really dive into giving them advice or anything like that. You can only give them actual proper details of what's around their community, the numbers, all of that. And it's up to them how they're going to actually figure it out in their minds.
Because you're representing the
a lot of times, yes.
developer, right? So you have to, and it's fair, right? You got to be in their best interest.
Yes, exactly. So yes, and I always tell everyone, if I'm approaching them, that I only work, in the best interest of the purchaser. So it is up to them to find their own, team of people, right? For either if they have realtors or legal advice, taxation advice, all of that.
So then obviously most of the time, once they hear a developer wants to come and knock on my door and wants to buy my home or my land, all of a sudden they think their land is worth like billions of dollars. Is that true?
Actually, we get that a lot too. A lot of people think that just because it's a land development site or all of a sudden, oh my God, it's worth so much. But it does take a lot of I guess, knowledge and teaching, educating of, hey, yes, it's great that your land is worth a lot more than the regular market rate of a house. However, depending on what the city actually allowed to build there, there's certain restrictions in how much that the developer can work with too. So a lot of times if you deduct it, so you show them, right? So theoretically, this is how much things are being sold now, right? You just show them this and this, and these are the numbers, and then they can come to their own conclusions. Oh, wait, yeah, I mean, if I sold it, if I'm wanting this much, then yeah, no one's going to be interested, right? Because where there's no gain. If there's zero gain for a developer, they're putting the money, the time, everything into it, and they're not making anything. No one's going to do that, right? Yeah, that's just normal business.
But then I guess there's that part convincing them that to bring them back to reality.
Then it just depends on the seller themselves. It's up to them to sort of justify whether or not they want to sell at this price or if it's the right time for them. And if it's not, then we just say, hey, thank you very much. Shake your hands, and if you ever think of me in the future, then away you go.
I got a question. So, when you're actually doing these like land developments and you're talking to all these like sellers and buyers, right? So, what is the expected like? Because when you're actually really like, as Joe is speaking, that you're actually going to and talk to them, right? And say like, let's say the property value of that place is only worth like 2 mil, with the development potential, like. Is it going like 2.2, 2.5, or even $5 million, right?
So again, that actually is very dependent on what it's zoned for.
Yes.
So it could range, yeah.
What is the craziest that you have seen? Like, let's say, like, oh, it's only worth like a $2 million home, you just buy a loan, but then like it's actually worth like, oh, $7 million, right?
Okay. The craziest that I have done was 3 lots, and each lot at assessment was about 800,000. And the total for the 3 lots, I sold it for over 16 mil. So that gives you the range of really, depending on what OCP it's at, then it can really give a very high number. And sometimes numbers talk, right? Obviously, it's easier for the sellers to let go because it's a big number. But that's also for a tower site, like a high rise. So
it has to make sense.
It has to make sense. Yeah, numbers have to work.
So typically a deal would take how long? Like typically, I know there's no.
That one, yeah, that one took me 3.5 months of running around.
Well, that's not too bad.
But the payout of that one was 1.5 years.
Okay.
Yes. So, I mean, doing a lot of these deals most of the time, because developers like money and time is also money, right? So, as a realtor, you think, oh, you guys make a lot of money, but you actually handle a lot of stress because you're actually waiting a long time before like these payouts as well. But in the end, I think it's, as long as, for me, it's getting the deal done and that both parties are happy. I mean, obviously, I only represent the one side, but it's great when everyone's happy.
Well, it's hard to control the other side because the other side, they find like a really shitty realtor.
Typically, I think because I I like to sleep really well at night. Like I can instantly fall asleep. So with all of my deals, I'm pretty much like I'm very honest and upfront about everything, and I think both sides understand that about me. So they're very willing to just work with me for the most part.
So it would be easier that way because then you can manage the situation a bit better.
Yeah, but I mean, even if there was another realtor on the other side, like a lot of great realtors are out there. They're very easy to work with, and they're pretty amazing too.
Well, there's good ones, and there's always going to be the bad ones.
Yes, but I hope to say that they're few and far between.
Well, there's bad apples and good apples in any industry, right?
That's right. Yeah. And any industry raised humans, right? Really.
But any funny stories that you wanted to share, like the most funniest story that you came across while doing all of this?
Funny story? I don't know. I mean, I have fun with everything I do, but I don't know if I really have a funny story because usually we're talking big numbers, so there's nothing really.
I guess
funny
has there ever been a seller that's so stubborn that they're like, I don't want to sell mine, and then everybody else beside them has been sold, so they're the only one that sits in the middle. And then what happens now? And then they just build everything around them, and then like a surrounded little house.
Okay, so it's not a personal story, but it's definitely happened. We're gonna take one. I think it's from San Francisco. There's one right smack in the middle of like their downtown. So it's like downtown, like tons of like high-rise skyscrapers, and there's this one little house where the developer actually did build around that house. So I don't know how San Francisco works, but our cities actually work very similar. So there's what we can call orphan lots, and that could happen if you can prove. So let's say a developer goes down the entire block. There's just that one house. So it's like, nope, I'm not selling. So if the developer tried their best to gain that property and gave them better and absolutely can prove that they gave them a much higher value on their property than it's worth, and they still were stubborn and didn't sell, then the city can actually then go, okay, well, obviously this is because of the seller, and they've decided they don't want to sell even for such a great price, and everything was being very reasonable to their terms and everything, and they still didn't want to sell. The city will then go, okay, not a problem. They will look at all the details and possibly approve that yes, your development can now go around this house. So orphan lots are possible. For the people who think that, hey, if I just hold on and I never sell, and I'm going to keep this development away from getting, developed, then they're actually incorrect in that sense.
So they will, at some point, they can build.
They can, yes. And
So
cities will approve,
it's
yes.
true. On Ontario and the Marine Drive, you can see there's a long block. There's a house in the middle. Two different, you can go there and take a look. Ontario and Marine Drive. And also Queen Elizabeth Park.
Oh.
Right? When you come out of Canadian Tire and the it's facing directly to the mall. There's only one house in between the two sites, like two developments. That's one example. Also on Canby. Queen Elizabeth Park, you will see there's one house between two projects.
So it is possible.
Yes,
it is
lots.
possible,
Yes,
definitely.
Yes. Well, and the reason being, like, you might think, oh, well, is this, is it unfair to that house? Actually, it's not, because they've been given a very fair chance and opportunity to get.
And the owner has the right. They can stay. They have the right to stay.
That's right. The owner has the right. They do.
They don't have to sell if they choose to be in between two projects.
I have two follow-up questions on that. So as a seller, you decide to stay there. You can live there. I don't think it's comfortable when you guys.
It's up to you to decide, right?
Well, it depends what I think it really depends on what you do.
I don't think the seller thought that far ahead and realized that like there's so many units beside me now, and then they're like.
I think what people fail to understand is developments aren't happening just because it's a cash grab or that, people can make money and that's why it's being developed. The city actually has certain quotas, and they'll look at the whole what the supply and demand chain is for the city. So they look at it and they go, hey, we actually have a need for housing, and especially these days for new developments, they have a rental housing component to it as well. So it's either the money is being filtered for assisting the lower income, or they actually have units for the lower income. So these are things that are incorporated into a lot of the newer developments that I think people should understand. It's because we have a need, which is why we're developing. Not that, hey, we're just for the sake of developing, we're here to get your house. It's not the case.
So then going back, so then the house in that orphan orphan house in the middle.
Lot, yes.
Orphan lot.
As we call them, yes.
It's not going to be very pleasant to live in, I don't think.
Well, you never know. I was thinking an
Right.
idea. Is it even possible if they can, like, because it's a high-rise like zoning area, right? And there's like more density, definitely. And then like maybe they can actually change their house to like a coffee shop or like a restaurant.
Okay.
Like
Certainly, yes.
because it will be kind of like commercial.
Yeah, if you see there is
Daycare.
down by Homer and what is it? Homer and Rothman area, like that area, like Smythe and Homer and
Yeah.
Rothman. Yes. I don't know exactly what street they're on. I always forget to check, but there's 4 heritage homes, right? Heritage homes that have been converted to commercial, and they're quite beautiful and lovely. And it's basically 4 really, olden day homes, very character, and then all the like high rises around them. So yeah, it's still character. Yeah.
What about the value then, as a orphan lot?
I think it really depends on where it's situated and what can be done with it. So
Maybe you might change to a commercial lot.
That would increase in value, but if you can't do anything with it, that thing will depreciate, I'm assuming.
sometimes you have to be
Standalone
creative.
gym. Like with
Commercial,
like
assuming that's not the case, then if it's just all you can do is just as is, like there's no value pretty much.
Yeah, and it depends on the location where it's located, right? Obviously, if it's like straight downtown, there's a lot of things you can do with it. If it's a more suburban area, then you're not going to have a lot of, abilities
Yes,
to
that's right,
kind of
that's right.
transition that into something better, right? hmm
Well, again, if you can, if you cannot, then there's nothing we can do, or the seller can do, right?
Yeah, but try not to be an orphan lot.
So do people usually like regret if they really
I haven't experienced it myself, so I can't say, but I've heard that there's people who've told stories that said this person didn't sell and then they regretted it afterwards. Definitely that's the case. But there's also, people who just wanted to live there all their life, so they don't mind, even being orphan lot or not.
maybe there's like few generations back
Mhm.
they lived there and then they really like that location.
Mhm.
There's a lot of
For some
memories.
people,
out there.
it's not about the money. It's about the lifestyle and their legacy and their family.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm just thinking about comfort at that point.
Mhm.
Then it's great that you have a legacy, but again, you're
You
surrounded.
don't want to be in the middle of construction.
No, you don't. Like dust coming this way, cut dust.
When they're excavating, demolishing, it could be
Oh.
like dirt.
It's a process, exactly. It's not just the after fact.
It's gross.
Well, it's not recommended for the most part, but I mean, if you absolutely love your house and you don't want to go, of course,
It's a
you have
free
every right
country.
to, right?
It's a free country. You can do whatever you want.
Exactly. hmm
So what are the high like demand for these kind of like rezoning areas right now? Like which part of the city?
Everywhere. We have supply and demand everywhere. So I would say everywhere from downtown Vancouver. I mean, downtown, we really don't have much land left, right? So from downtown Vancouver all the way through to Abbotsford is busy. Yeah. Lots of development, lots of things happening.
Is it usually on the main area, like on Kingsway, Main Street?
Not necessarily, but usually the higher, I guess the higher profile ones are going to be in main landmarks of places, right? So.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you
And
for having me. Yes.
we'll definitely have you come back again to provide even more updates on anything of real estate
Yes.
related.
There is a potential orphan lot, but I can't talk about it right now. Well, to be updated.
Oh, so do tell us so we can have you come back here and talk about that specific process.
That might be a while before we find out.
No, it's always good to have updates in the stories.
Great.
So we're always looking for good stories.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, until next time. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed listening to the podcast, you have to check out AM 605 on Facebook, where it's all about real investment and financing strategies. Brought to you by Melissa Wu PREC, Gary.chan Mortgage Team, and Tang Wealth and Investment.